Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports with another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 8 power rankings for the 2022 NFL season. Another insane week of a lot of upsets and a lot of crazy games in the NFL, and a lot of really boring games. This season has been marked by a lot of extremely boring games, and some extremely crazy ones, and a lot of upsets. So, let's get right into it. First off, we have the dumpster fire. As always, we have the Lions, the Bears, the Texans, and the Panthers. Yes, the Panthers are still in the dumpster fire because I really could not put them any higher than this. The Lions are at 32. They've lost a lot of games in a row. They only have one win on the year, and that was early on in the season, and it was a very high-scoring game, and their offense has just looked awful the last two games they've played against the Patriots, and then this week against Dallas. Of course, those are two of the better teams in the league, but the only thing they had going for them was that they were putting up 30-something points a week, and then their offense went off the cliff, and their defense still isn't doing any better. I have the Bears at 31. If they win tomorrow, they will no longer be at 31, but I won't be adjusting the power rankings because I will not have any interest in talking about anything related to football if the Bears win tomorrow. That being said, they have been arguably the worst team in the league this year. They did win a game against the 49ers early on, and then they did win another game early in the year, but they've just been horrendously bad since then. Their offense has just looked so... I know David Montgomery's been injured, but their offense has been so inconsistent. Their defense has not looked like some of the dominant Bears defenses we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. It's not great. Houston's at 30. They have one win and one tie. They looked like they could have won this game against the Raiders today, and then they got demolished in the fourth quarter. And the Panthers did, in fact, beat the Buccaneers 21-3 in a surprising game. Not the most surprising game in the world. I honestly thought that the Panthers had a decent shot of winning it, even with Christian McCaffrey out. So, yeah, that tells you what you need to know about the Buccaneers. As for the Panthers, this is only their second win of the season. They really have not looked great. And again, with Tampa's offense, they lost to the Steelers last week. So again, it's not the most impressive win in the world, but it does bring them... they were going to be at 32. Once Christian McCaffrey was sent off, they were going to be at 32. So they're up 3 spots. It's kind of hard to put them a lot higher than this. Next up, we have bad. We have the Broncos at 28, we have the Browns at 27, and we have the Steelers at 26. All of these teams are extremely unimpressive. The Broncos and Browns, I thought both had some promise at the start of the season. I really thought the Broncos were going to be amazing. I had them in the top 5 preseason. Russell Wilson has put up a stinker of a year. Brett Rippon almost did better this game. They've lost 4 in a row. The Browns have also lost 4 in a row. I was not sold on the Browns at the beginning of the year, but I thought they could stay above water for Deshaun Watson to come back and make a playoff run. They are not staying above water. They've lost 4 games in a row. They're 2-5. And much like the Broncos, they look like they're out of the playoffs, out of the picture, and they look completely destroyed. They just don't look good in any capacity. We have the Steelers at 26. Another team that does not look great in a whole lot of capacities. They did beat the Buccaneers last week, 20-18, but again, that has not looked too impressive recently. This week, they played the Miami Dolphins with Tua back. The Dolphins are a top 10 team with Tua. That has a lot of T's in it. With Tua, the Dolphins are a top 10 team. And it was a tough game for the Steelers to play. If they could have had the Dolphins before Tua got back, it might have been a different story, but sadly they didn't. And they just have not looked impressive since since week 1 against the Bengals. They did get a surprise win last week, but other than that, after week 1, they've looked pretty bad. Some solid games. We have the Jaguars at 25, we have the Saints at 24, we have Washington at 23, and the Raiders at 22. The Raiders have hovered around 22 for most of the year. My preseason predictions, they were, I think, 14, and then week 2 predictions and week 3 predictions, they were still above 20, but since then they've been towards the bottom. They have 2 wins on the year. They are 2-4, and they have the best record in this category, the second best record in this category. But their wins are not the most impressive in the world. They beat the Broncos, although they did put up more than 30 against one of the better defenses in the league. And then they did beat the Texans today with 38 points on the board. So their offense has looked a lot better the past few weeks than it did at the beginning of the season. Obviously, Derek Carr needed to get used to playing with Adams, and Hunter Renfrow has been out So there's been a lot of changes in the Raiders' offense, but they seem to be clicking a little bit. I almost put them at 20, but I thought it was a little too early. I have the Commanders at 23, I have the Saints at 24, and I have the Jaguars at 25. The Jaguars are on a 4-game losing streak, and because of that, they're at the bottom of this category, but I don't think that they're necessarily the worst team here. The 4-game losing streak really does hurt them, though. Washington being on a 2-game winning streak does help them. They beat the Bears last week, and then this week they were able to beat the Green Bay Packers. I don't think that they're better than the Packers. I think that if Aaron Rodgers had a couple more quarters, he would have won the game. But also, Alan Lazard did go out in the third quarter, so there were some issues with the Green Bay Packers offense in that game. I think that overall the Washington Commanders are an inconsistent football team that can beat a lot of teams, and they've had some solid games. As for the Saints, I thought they're going to be a really strong team this year. They've had way too many injuries. Their quarterback, once again, Jameis Winston, got injured. They have not looked the same with Andy Dalton. They have had some strong offensive performances, though. They did have a very strong game against Seattle where they won. They're currently on a 2-game losing streak, but their offense has looked pretty solid. Even in the Cardinals game, there were 2 pick sixes, which really killed them, but if they didn't have those, if Andy Dalton was a little bit more careful with the ball or they're able to stop the pick six, then they might have been able to win the game. But nothing is just going right for the Saints right now. That's why they're at 24. This category is pedestrian, because that's what the Packers and the Buccaneers are. They're pedestrian. Their offenses cannot do anything. The Packers did put up 21 points, but that was in desperation. 7 of them came from the defense. These offenses cannot do anything. Tampa put up 3. The only reason why Tampa is ahead of the Packers is honestly because they just look better on paper. There's a lot more potential with the Tampa Bay offense. The fact that they put up 3 points against the Panthers defense is extremely concerning with Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, Chris Godwin. The talent on that team is enormous. The only reason why they're higher than the Packers is because they're better on paper. Both of these defenses have been very strong, but they've both been inconsistent. They've both let up 20 points this week. If the Buccaneers defense was a little bit more consistent, then the offense might have had a little more chance. Obviously, the defense played a lot better than the offense did in this game, but both of these teams have pedestrian offenses right now, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. These teams are mid. We have the Colts at 19, we have the Falcons at 18, we have the Rams at 17, and we have the Cardinals at 16. Cardinals are at 16 because DeAndre Hopkins is back. I think that that's a serious improvement to the team. And otherwise, they would still be at 19. The only reason why they're at 16 is because DeAndre Hopkins is back, and I think that that is a serious improvement to their team. If Hopkins was there in the Rams game, I think they would have won that. He just adds a lot of value to their offense. Colts and the Falcons. I really want to put the Falcons higher, but they did lose by a pretty bad margin this week. They lost 35-17. I really thought that they would have had a chance to win this game, but it did not go their way. Joe Burrow just put on a phenomenal performance. You can't really do much about that, so I couldn't really move the Falcons up or down. They just kind of stayed around where they were. But Joe Burrow had a phenomenal performance, and I don't blame the Falcons defense. The Falcons have been in every game that they've played this year. Every game has been within 6 points until this week. That cannot be said for the Colts. The Colts are the most bipolar team in the league. They've won by 20. They've lost by 20. They can do anything. Literally anything. They beat Kansas City. They lost by 24 to Jacksonville. That was in Jacksonville, but still. They drew with the Texans. I don't know where to put the Colts. I just think the Falcons are a more consistent football team than the Colts are. The Rams are at 17. That's because they're on a bye week, and I think they're around that last week. They're 3-3. They've let up 77 points and scored 29 in their games against competitive teams. They've been outscored by 50 points in their games against competitive teams. The 3 games that they lost were against the competitive teams they've played. Every other game they've played has been against the Cardinals or worse, and they haven't been able to do anything in the games against teams better than Arizona. And I don't see any of these teams as contenders currently. The next category is teams that are not in the top 10. I really couldn't think of anything else other than the fact that none of these teams are top 10 teams, and none of them should be anywhere near the top 10. I almost put them all at 15, but technically I need to have a little bit more of an order than that. I already did something weird with a different one of the tiers, so I'm not going to do that with this one. We have the Chargers at 15, which is the lowest they've been all season. We have the 49ers at 14. We have the Seahawks at 13, the Patriots at 12, and the Dolphins at 11. Two of these teams are the highest they've been all year, and one of these teams is the lowest they've been all year. The Chargers really have looked really bad. The most impressive game they've played the entire season was their 3-point loss to Kansas City. All of their wins have been by a few points. They beat the Texans by 10, which they should have beaten the Texans by 10. They beat the Browns by 2. They had another game against a bad team where they won by 3, and another one where they won by 5. Their games have not been impressive in any capacity, and their most impressive game was their 3-point loss to Kansas City. They got demolished by the Seahawks this week, and I know that Keenan Allen's back, and that should give them a little bit of a boost, but they have a lot of injuries in their wide receiver core, and they just don't look great right now. Same with the 49ers. They've been the most inconsistent team in the league. They've lost to the Broncos, the Bears, and the Falcons, but they've also demolished the Rams. And they haven't had a whole lot of consistency, and the reason why the 49ers are lower than the Patriots and the Seahawks is because of the consistency. The Seahawks have scored 136 points in their last 4 games. That's 34 points a game. They're 3-1 of those games. Seattle's the hottest team in the league right now. And I think anyone arguing that Seattle is not better than the Chargers or the 49ers at this point in the season is kidding themselves, because Geno Smith has played a phenomenal season. The defense hasn't been the best in the world, but it's been better than the Seattle defense has been the last couple of years. And a little bit more consistency on the defense, and the Seahawks could be contenders. They're number 1 in their division right now. They're 4-3. And Seattle's looking like a very serious team this year. Geno Smith has looked really good. The Patriots were at 14 last week. They're at 12 this week. They haven't played yet, but I do expect a win. If they lose to the Bears, then they will drop down to 15. They won't drop down below the Cardinals. They're still better than the Cardinals. But I really, really, really hope that we don't lose tomorrow. If the Patriots lose tomorrow, then oh boy. It's going to be a long season. If the Patriots lose tomorrow, they're no longer in this tier. They're in the mid-tier. But I don't see it happening. Miami's at 11 because I said once 2 is back, they will be in the top 10. And I can't seriously put them in the top 10 because the top 10 is pretty set right now. They did beat the Steelers, but I think that the teams that are in the top 10 right now, you can't really put a whole lot of people above them. If Miami comes again and wins next week and 2 is 5-0, then yes, they'll be back in the top 5 easily back in the top 5 if Tua wins next week and 2 is 5-0. But I need to see Tua play a team that's other than the Steelers before I can put them any higher than 11. But because Tua is back and they did get the first win, they're at 11. 10, 9, 8, and 7, we have the Titans, we have the Jets, we have the Ravens, and we have the Bengals. Titans, really bringing it on the second half of the year. They really started off poorly with a couple of big losses, but they've been able to reel it back in. They've won, I believe, 4 of their last 5 games. Jets at 9. They stayed in the same place as last week. Not the best game in the world, but they did get the win against the Broncos. Breece Hall went out, which may or may not be a serious injury. We're not sure yet. But the Jets are 5-2, and they definitely deserve a top 10 spot. The Bengals have jumped over the Ravens. The Ravens were 7 last week. The Bengals were 8. Now the Bengals are 8, and the Ravens are 7. Now the Bengals are 7. The Ravens are 8. That's because Joe Burrow put on a perfect performance. He had almost 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. You can't really beat that. And the Bengals' offense has looked a lot more explosive than the Ravens have in the second half of the season. They won a very strong game against the Saints a couple weeks ago, and now this week they had a perfect game against the Falcons. The Ravens have looked inconsistent. They can barely win their games. And the games that they do win, and when they lose games, it's always down to the wire and really bad coaching. The Ravens would be higher if they had better coaching, but they're just too inconsistent for me to have them higher than the Bengals right now. At number 6, we have the Giants. At number 5, we have the Vikings. And at number 4, we have the Cowboys. The Vikings have been at 4 for the last 3 or 4 weeks. The reasons why the Cowboys have jumped over them is because Dak Prescott's back. Obviously, Dak had a bad game, but he is back, and because he's back, the Cowboys are at number 4. Their defense also looks more and more consistent every week, and again, they held that Lions offense, which can have some explosiveness to it, to just 6 points. The Dallas defense has been the most consistent defense in the league. It's won them almost all of their games, and I can't really see putting them a whole lot lower than 4. The Giants are 6-1. They have the best record out of the 3 teams here, but they have had the easiest schedule. Sorry, the Vikings and the Giants have had equally easy schedules. The Cowboys have had the hardest schedule. And the Cowboys did beat the Giants. That being said, the Giants and the Vikings have both had a pretty solid season so far. If the Giants win another game, like, it's hard to put none of these teams are in the elite category. None of these teams are anywhere near the Buffalo Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles, or the Kansas City Chiefs as far as talent or consistency. But they're all very serious contenders, and they're having amazing seasons. Now we have the NFL's elite. I have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, and the Bills and the Eagles at number 2. The reason why I have the Bills and the Eagles at number 2 is because last week I said I put them both at number 1. And all the Bills fans and all the Eagles fans got mad at me that I had them share the number 1 spot. Now, there's no argument that these are the best 3 teams in the league. No one is anywhere close. But Kansas City's number 1 this week because all the Bills fans and Eagles fans got mad that they shared the spot last week, so neither of them get it this week. They were both on bye weeks, so Kansas City, with their 44-point win against the Niners, one of the better defenses in the league, deserves the number 1 spot for this week. They're not the best team in the league, but they get the number 1 spot because Bills fans and Eagles fans cannot be happy even when I put them both at number 1. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys all in the next one.